really related with it. I felt like a lot of it spoke to me personally. Ari, I'm such a huge fan of yours. Congratulations on what is, in my opinion, a brilliant masterpiece of nightmares. You mentioned earlier that this was a breakup movie, or this was based on a breakup, or came out of a breakup for you, and I just want to say, are you okay? Do we need to talk? Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, good.
Thanks for asking.
No, I just want to make sure you were right. I felt like watching this film, it really lulled me into a state that I was not expecting. I think I was really bracing myself for like what I had experienced watching Hereditary, which was a little bit more of a traditionally paced horror film, and this film reminded me so much more of like Lars von Trier's work, of this kind of like almost descent into a world that I'd never experienced before. And I was wondering if you would talk a little bit about where this idea came from and how you decided on this particular setting for the film.
Well, about 4 years ago, I was actually brought sort of a broad folk horror concept by a Swedish production company, Be Real. Patrick Anderson, the producer here, is here right now, and they pitched me, an Americans going to Sweden and then getting killed off concept, and I at first didn't really see a way into that, and I don't know, it wasn't really, it didn't feel like me. But then I was also at the time going through a breakup, which was really like fresh, and I saw a way of marrying the breakup movie with with the folk horror subgenre, and then kind of making like this big operatic breakup movie, and so from there it sort of became very personal.
One of the things I really loved about the film was your choice to, and you switch POVs both in this film and in Hereditary, meaning you have a protagonist, but you're not afraid to switch to another character's point of view. But most of the time we are with Danny and kind of seeing this whole thing unfold from her perspective. What's cool is that I did a film with Kirsten Dunst, who told me that Lars von Trier, when she did Melancholia, said that he creates female characters to feel his feelings for him, and that I was wondering if you felt like, as I was watching Florence's incredible performance as this, I was like, I wonder if he, relates more with the female protagonist rather than the male protagonist, especially when dealing with something like, either a breakup or grief or a family drama or a relationship drama. I don't know if that's a leading question, but how do you feel about that?
There's a lot of me and Danny. Sorry, is this me? I don't know. Okay, so there's a lot of me and Danny, definitely. And I really love Lars von Trier's work, especially Dogville. Yes, definitely. But
do you want to use mine? It's like a nice ominous kind of rain, which I feel like, I don't know if you're getting this on our live feed, but it's definitely hot in here.
Okay, sorry. Sure. Maybe I'll just. Yeah. Sorry. So what was I saying?
Dogville.
Dogville, yeah, it's still there. Sorry, I'm gonna go crazy. Dogville is a very important film to me, and we were talking about it there at the stand, which was this.
Yes, yeah.
Now. see the connection between this and that film until like recently, because a film comment asked me to write a piece on like a really short piece on the film that affected me the most that I saw in New York, and I had to write about Dogville. And as I was writing about it, I was like, oh shit, okay, yeah, I like must have inadvertently at least tried to like make my Dogville, but yeah, I can't really speak to putting myself into these women, which I have done in the last two films. So that's sort of my non-answer.
It was a good non-answer. It was a good non-answer. I think a lot of like what Danny is seeking in this film is not just comfort or appreciation, but family. And I think what comes with family is an intense amount of unconditional love and empathy. And it was really interesting that Jack's character, Christian, it was interesting to see a male protagonist whose biggest flaw, whose big punishable flaw is his lack of empathy. I don't know if you or Jack want to talk about that at all.
First of all, show of hands, how many people think I deserve to be murdered that way? There's a few. Go home and have a good look at yourselves.
Oh, sure. Okay. Allow me. Yeah, I mean that's what's happening here. I mean, I see the film definitely as like this perverse wish fulfillment fantasy, where you have this woman who, is in this, she's in this, existential crisis, and she's been deprived of her family. It's this one. It's you. Is it me?
I think it's actually your aura.
It might be.
It's just like
It's your voice.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Can you hear us without it, or do we need it for the live stream?
We might need it for the live stream.
Oh, I see.
Hello.
And we'll be out of time.
Okay. Wait, what was I saying?
We were
This
talking
is-
about. No, we were talking about.
How much I deserve to die.
How much Christian deserves to die.
All right. Yeah.
Because I think it's such a slippery. It's like I don't know, Jack, if you want to talk about tracking that, that arc or whatever, but it's kind of slippery. Like it's not. Initially, I kind of thought, oh, he's kind of overwhelmed by this girl's, experiences and her emotions and her grief, and then it kind of little by little, I realized that narcissism and that lack of empathy kind of extended to everyone, and that it actually wasn't just specifically in his romantic life, but actually kind of.
Well, I think there's definitely kind of a sense that this is someone who's pretty self-involved, and given the circumstances, as a result of what happens with her family, I think if her parents and her sister hadn't died in such an awful way, he probably would have broken up with her pretty soon after, the start of the movie kind of thing, and everything would have been fine. But, given the fact that he's kind of like, in some way feels this duty to her, given what happens, this dysfunctional relationship is kind of permitted to continue to just limp on. And something that I've come back to a couple of times in interviews about the film is that, given its roots in a sort of a kind of a folkloric sort of element, the film suspends the audience from their own kind of like moral code and social norms and stuff, and you're kind of like brought on a journey where you're just questioning what you think is okay and how far you're willing to go into these people's traditions. And so I think that kind of raises the question of, okay, how much can we punish this guy for his lack of empathy, as you say? And I don't know, like, I mean, when I read the script initially, I could see that he was a character who was, you know, as I said, self-involved and was kind of lacking in empathy in some respects, but also was somebody who was kind of stuck in a tight spot and was kind of looking for his own autonomy as well. And
excuses.
Yeah. No, but it's, you know, I think it's much more interesting to me if there's a kind of multi-dimensionality to it, and I really felt that there was. And so, you know, for me, it's kind of like this guy's big crime is that he didn't have it in him to break up with this person and get out of this relationship and let her go and let himself get out of it when he should have. And
Yeah,
you know, and for that he basically gets boiled alive inside a bear suit.
Which I felt was super justifiable, and should be put into practice regularly. So I felt like let's talk a little bit about the cult and the iconography and the if you want to talk a little bit about the research that you did. One of the things that I loved about the film is that it really essentially indoctrinates you into their cult as you're watching it. So as you're watching the film, you're seeing these images, these etchings, these drawings, these symbols, and whether you know it or not, you're putting together, you know, the A to the B to the C to the D, and sort of by the time Jack's in a bear being burned alive, you almost feel kind of prepared for that in a way. Do you want to talk at all about, like, is there stuff that's based in reality? Is this all made up? Is some of it based in, can I move there? Like, is there a way I could be part of this cult? Just let me know.
I mean, it's a stew. So we're drawing from actual Swedish traditions, we're drawing from Swedish folklore, we're drawing from mythology that's, you know, from like, you know, Norse mythology, but then we're also, I'm pulling from, you know, research that, you know, leads back to Germany and England. And then I would say even more than, so this is, you know, a community that kind of their language is empathy. And so I kind of had to go to other places for that kind of research. And so there are a lot of like spiritual movements that I was thinking about and drawing from, and a lot of them I don't want to mention because I think that they're beautiful, and I feel like this, I don't want to like sully them because ultimately, I don't know. Anyway, we can talk like over coffee.
No, but I know what you mean. I know what you mean. It's like I just recently read a book about the road to Jonestown. It's called The Road to Jonestown, and about how a lot of these kind of, it does start with empathy. It does start with helping. It does start with putting your community before your own needs and your own ideas, and the idea that here is this woman who's been told don't show your feelings. If you show your feelings, your relationship may not succeed, it may not last, you know, like for her to feel utterly accepted by this group of people that are kind of built around that idea. Again, as you guys can tell, I saw this as a very aspirational film. But I want to ask Wilhelm, who is actually apparently from Sweden, which is a real place in the world. I actually spent a summer in Sweden when I was 19 years old, just drunk completely. And it really, the sun does not go down, and I had a nervous breakdown and had to come home early. But do you want to talk at all about whether or not what your experience was coming on board for this film, and maybe talk a little bit about anything that you did feel like you recognized as, because you guys did not shoot this in Sweden as well. You shot it in.
No, but it was like coming home. Obviously.
Really, it was.
Yeah. No, but there is like a level up on this movie. How Midsommar is actually in Sweden. It's on Friday actually. But we
it's happening right now. It's happening on Friday. Oh, excellent. I'll see you guys there. Yeah.
No, but it was a great experience, of course. I really enjoyed the movie, the result. But the herring, you saw the herring? We eat herring as well. That's pretty much it.
And that's where the similarities just end right there.
And not the way she eat it. I mean, we don't get fed.
What I thought was so interesting about your character was that, ultimately you are, what do they say? He brings new blood.
The hero.
Yeah, you are kind of the hero.
Yeah.
Well, you're the hero to
Everyone.
But in a lot of ways, like, I found myself as I was watching the film, even though I knew there must be an ulterior motive with this guy, like, especially once the elders jump off the cliff, I thought, oh God, here we go. But even before that, I thought, oh gosh, this is the guy. I still, when you were consoling Danny, when you drew the photo, the drawing for her, I really found myself like loving you and letting my guard down in a way as a viewer. Did you at all think about, or did you already instruct him in any way to kind of play the intention of leading people to their deaths, or was it solely I'm doing good?
I mean, for me, it was just I tried to play Pelle as empathic as possible as I was able to do him, and sympathetic and positive.
I think you achieved that and did a great job. Ari, do you think at all, like in that terms of like playing against the intention or against the action or anything like that when you're working in genres like horror that are intentionally when you have red herrings, you're intentionally misleading the audience?
Yeah, I mean, while I'm outlining them, I'm sure I am. And then as I get into the writing, I kind of stop thinking about that. Although, I mean, it was important for me that, the people of Horga be like really fair. Like, even if you don't agree with what they're doing, like they're giving up just as many of themselves as they are of like the outsiders, and like there is this, they are devoted to like this this philosophy of total reciprocity, which of course is something that's like missing in the central relationship.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Between the protagonists, for sure. I want to talk about the humor in the film too, because I found myself, I don't know if I wasn't watching it with you guys, but I laughed a lot watching the film. And I wanted to talk to Will a little bit, to speak a little to being I mean, you literally, your corpse has like a jester hat on at the end. Like, I think we get it.
And I'm also a real life idiot as well.
What's it like, how do you prepare knowing that the film is going to be essentially one type of, or be considered one type of genre, and yet at the same time, that part of your experience as, I don't want to say comic relief, but that in a way you are meant to be the diffuser of particular situations. Is that something that you intentionally think about or map out?
That's interesting. I feel like, given that it was an Ari Aster movie, I knew that to an extent we'd be playing in the grey areas, or indeed kind of making a film that exists in its sort of own area, and that was exciting to me. So I didn't feel as though I was ever being asked to be the kind of comic relief in a horror movie, to kind of put it in the most sort of basic and inappropriate terms. I felt like, sweet Jesus, the horror is not over. I hope that ghost doesn't come back. I felt as though I was lucky to be playing a character who was kind of richly fleshed out, someone who wasn't just a jester or a fool, but someone who, like every character in this movie, is entirely authentic, is believable. And I think with Ari being such a gifted kind of writer and director, I felt at every turn we were being asked to play what felt real, and it's what I love about the movie. I think that the entry point for me, as an actor is the same, hopefully for the audience, in that there are very relatable characters and very relatable dynamics in this movie, and it also, you know, was a no-brainer for me, given that my task was to play Christian's best friend, and this is my 4th movie with Jack, so that wasn't too much of a stretch. But I had a lot of fun with the humour too, but I also thought that Mark was quite a pathetic, sad, deeply insecure character, who I think also, against the backdrop of the time that we live in now, where, albeit late, we are addressing kind of the profile of what a male could, I don't want to say should, but could be. Mark feels particularly antiquated, out of date, regressive. A lot of what comes out of his mouth is misogynistic, offensive, often a colourful combination of both. And I particularly enjoyed the ways in which Mark was often there to kind of, I think, add to a lot of kind of Danny's sort of stress and trauma some of the time, you know, like as the least helpful friend to you, and the kind of worst best friend of the guy you're dating as well. So yeah, I'm just grateful to have played such a kind of like layered and interesting character.
The other thing that I think is really interesting, we only watched the film for the first time last night, and when it ended, we just sat in silence for about 10 minutes. Just couldn't even, we were fucked. But one of the things that really struck me about your character is that there's something of like the Shakespearean herald in him, you know? Like there's one character in the entire film who's constantly calling what's going on and going, this is fucking crazy, these people are mad, can you not see what they're doing? And because there's this comedic element to your character, it's overlooked and kind of dismissed by everybody else who's in the middle of it, and they're blind to it. But your character is really the only character who's going, can you not all see what's going on here? You know what I mean? It's something of like the fool from King Lear in it, really. Wasn't that what you meant, Ari?
I think we have to wrap up, but I just want to say again, congratulations you guys on how fucking fantastic this this film is. I'm a personal repeat viewer, watcher person, like especially with films like this one I mentioned to you, that like you know, even movies that initially I see the first time, if they have enough in them, I usually end up watching them over and over again, and I have a feeling I will do the same with this film. Do you think that you would recommend that people watch this more than once? I know that I will, but when you were making it, did you put in any clues or any like Easter eggs, or I don't know how they call what the kids are calling them nowadays, but I'm looking forward to finding some.
Yeah, I'd say several times minimum. You gotta really keep revisiting this again and again and again.
I'm gonna watch it every day
with your
for a month.
friends.
Like I'm just gonna there's gonna be a Midsommar month, and I'm just gonna watch it.
Yeah,
every night.
like 10 times would probably be pretty good for you.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
And
thank you.
congratulations, you guys. It's such a fantastic film. Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.